Hello everybody and welcome to the Creatorspace Online, the video editing live performances section that we're going to be talking about today. So thanks again for joining us everyone. Just a little bit delayed, just getting some setups here it's a lot of stuff to cover. So just wanted to make sure we have all our media online and so on. But yeah, just had a couple technical delays, but we're here. Welcome and thanks for joining us. So the great thing too is, you can sit back, enjoy, relax this session, and what will happen is you can then rewatch this. So there's no pressure to have to take notes. This same link you can rewatch right after. So my name is Tom Strnad. I'm the lead digital artist of the Creatorspace project, and as mentioned, today we'll be looking at video editing live performances. So I want to thank all our partners in this project. So we have the Canada Council for the Arts, and then we have our library partners. So we have the Blue Mountains Public Library, Collingwood Public Library, and the Wasaga Beach Public Library. So at each of these libraries, we have our digital arts computers. So we have Apple iMac computers, 27-inch iMacs that are fully loaded with Blackmagic DaVinci Resolve Studio software, and they're designed for editing. So you can do exactly what I'm talking about today on these computers. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the concepts of live performance, what that means, capturing it, and some of those ideas behind it. And it's a really timely topic because I think more and more as we have arts projects happening, performances, it could be gallery openings, concerts, theater, dance, any kind of performance or activity, events, they tend to get filmed more now. This is really the reality of trying to get into more virtual events and showcasing events that can be watched later, just like you're watching me right now. This is virtual, right? And otherwise we'd be in person and we'd be looking at this. So this is that idea of that, art as virtual production and live performances. And we're going to get into some of the best practices and some of the concepts and how to make that really work in the editorial and, showcase these things. Now, again, this is kind of an intro. This is basically an intro session, and we're going to get into more of this in future sessions, and they will be in person. So, look out for those, stay tuned for those, and I'm really excited that we'll be doing that as well. So what does this whole idea mean? So editing live concerts and multi-camera filming, that's really kind of our subtopics here. So the video editing of live performances, what does that really mean, and how does that work? So we're going to look at editing overview, working with live performances in editing, what that means. Then we're going to look at types of live performance filming. So what exactly, is that concept of live performance filming? How does it come to us in terms of editing, and how we might also be the ones filming it? So, that's the whole idea, is choosing these things, understanding how to deal with them. Multi-camera versus single camera. And that's really important too. So how do we do, multi-camera versus one camera in terms of the editorial and how that will look and react differently? Then creating a story for live performance. How do we actually, create that story or enhance the story? So live performance can be just the capture of the live performance, but it can also be enhancing it. So we could be telling more. We could do things such as behind the scenes. We can do things such as interviews. And we can do different angles that maybe the audience doesn't get to see. So this is the whole idea of telling more of the story. Maybe we need to enhance things later. So, we can have a narration to explain, for example, what a specific dance is or what a specific ballet piece is in terms of the story and giving us background. That could be done with photos, slides, other artwork. So you can start to think about this differently in terms of editorial. It doesn't have to be just editing that live performance, putting it together, there we go, it's done. It could be more about how do we explain what's happening. So we can have narration, we can have introductions, and these are things that might not be even happening at the live performance or at this event, but it could be added in editing. So this is what we want to kind of expand our thought process on in terms of what's possible with editing can really help change and redefine what we're going to do with our live performance and how that can work. So that's a really exciting aspect of this. Okay, so working with live performances and editing, and we're going to look at some samples of projects that I've worked on, I've been privileged to work on, and what that means. So live performance is, if you haven't done it, it's quite complex to film. The main thing is that in a live performance, the camera operator doesn't know what's going to happen next or where the camera should necessarily be set up. So sometimes things need to move. The camera might be moving to get a better angle. It might be handheld, it might be moving around. And that's really important. Stuff's live and you don't always know what's going to happen. And there are exceptions. So for example, let's say a theater piece, a play, recurring play, sometimes, you can see a rehearsal, you understand what's happening as a camera operator, as the cinematographer, so you can capture it quite reasonably, and because it's a repeated type of action. So that's great. But what happens when something is like totally live? Like let's say a presentation, an arts awards presentation, for example. You don't know exactly how it's going to go. There's a schedule, there's a plan. You don't know. Maybe the speech is different. Maybe someone starts performing, things like that. Improvisational arts performances can be happening too, where the dance is interpreted and it's different every time. So rehearsals won't even matter because all of a sudden the dance artist can be further in the audience. It can be different parts of the stage. So there's a lot of fluidity and a lot of moving parts, and it's complex. So it's not always exactly known what's going to happen. And this is again where editing can help fix these issues, and it can also be used to help better tell the story of this performance. Because it's live, we can fix things that might have happened in the live performance, such as maybe there's a stumble, so we can enhance things like that too. We can edit things out, and live has its like imperfections, and that's beautiful. And in the editing, we can decide what should stay there, what's natural and great, but also what is maybe a problem. Someone is not doesn't show up right on time to speak, and there's a big gap and everyone's waiting. We can get rid of those kinds of pauses. We don't need those. It has nothing to do with the actual recap of the event. So we can get rid of those kinds of pauses. Let's say the show's about to start. There's a delay. There's a technical issue. We can get rid of those technical issues, cut them out, and that's kind of the cool thing of how it all can work. Now, what else can we use to enhance this story? So here's some ideas that I have. So think of interviews, behind the scenes footage, shots of the audience reactions. So all that type of footage would be unique to the editing, and it wouldn't be part necessarily of what the live audience experienced. And that's a really interesting factor because the audience hasn't experienced it. They react to it differently because now the audience can start to learn more when they rewatch it. So, an interview, here's the idea. If we can tell the story of this live performance, so let's say there's an audience there. You're also dealing with, it's edited, so this means you're looking at kind of a post-event presentation that will be online most likely, or maybe there's a screening later to honor things. So you're basically looking at kind of capturing what this event is to the best of your abilities through the editing using the footage that you're given. So for example, think about this. If an audience saw something live, they might be enticed to further watch something that was filmed and edited if it had more information. So it's like you saw this dance performance. Now here's an encore film recording that features interviews with the artistic director, interviews with the dancers, and then that is really enticing to see because it's like, hey, I love that performance, now I want to see something more. And it's also helping better tell that story. So it could be interviews that discuss what this performance means, the background, the history, information, biographical, how was it made. Maybe there's a whole thing on your filming behind the scenes, the making of, the rehearsals, the process. People love seeing that kind of stuff. So the process can better help tell the story. That can be part of it. So think of the filmed performance and the edited performance as it could be complementary, it could be kind of ancillary, it could be an additional thing, and not just capture exactly what happened. At the same time, we can totally just capture exactly what happened, recreating that experience for an audience at home to watch again later. So there's really these two kind of avenues of where we can take things. And that's, a really exciting part when it comes to multi-camera editing and how that can work and how that can, be a process. So really different ways of thinking, and it's a great way to look at things. Okay, so types of live performance editing. I identified these three main types. There definitely can always be more, but these are kind of the three main types that you'll usually be dealing with yourself if you're filming it, or if as an editor, if you're getting footage and working with it. So number one, single camera overview. So the single camera overview is really just one camera that's there to capture highlights. It moves around, capturing different angles, different perspectives, things like that. So you know, that's really exciting and great. And you know, the single camera overview is a fantastic way to make things happen and to capture the performances. And really, you're getting highlights. So that's one way. So that's, you know, what we're looking at, and with one camera, pretty straightforward editing. Number two, we get into multi-camera filming. So this is where there's multiple cameras filming from different angles, and then this is then used to edit together a film version of the live performance. So the multiple cameras can be all over the place. So there could be different sizes. So there could be a wide shot of the performance. There could be close-ups of performers' faces, legs, feet, whatever's happening in the performance. Different angles. So let's say a musical concert, there could be different angles, you know, on the stage, off the stage, left, right, camera angles. There could be, you know, 3 cameras, there could be 12 cameras. So multi-camera, more than one. So at least 2 gets you into the multi-camera. And now the whole goal there is, what's great about the multi-camera is then all of a sudden you can edit between the two. So if you have just one shot and someone, you know, let's say someone in the audience walks in front of the shot, that shot's ruined. But if you have another angle, you can then cut to that angle. Or if the one camera is moving around and there's one wide that's stationary, that's great, because then you always have that wide stationary angle that you can cut to. And that's a great tip that I would definitely say right away, is if you are editing, filming it, one of the great best tips you can have is always have one wider angle that just stays recording and doesn't move. And you always have that as kind of your overview safety angle, if you will. So if there's more than one camera, try to have one just wide, one could be moving around, or a few can be moving around getting different angles, but that one wide shot can stay there. And that's really great to do that way. Number 3, a recording using multiple cameras is captured, and then the editing is used to fix any mistakes or issues from this live version. So what can typically happen is if there's multi-camera filming happening, it could also just be recorded. So it's called live switching. So we're familiar with that, such as in sports. You see multiple cameras and they're switched. So it's going from different cameras. It's live switching, or almost live editing. And then you're seeing that as a viewer at home on your television set, let's say a sports event, like a hockey game. So it's switched live, you're seeing it, and it's recorded. And then the idea here is that if each camera isn't recorded independently, there might just be that one recording of all these switched cameras. But there could be a little mistake. There could be a little bit of something that needs to get fixed. So as editors, we can look at taking that recording and fixing something. So you can remove, again, unwanted you know, gaps, let's say in timing, or something was delayed. We can get rid of those kind of holes. Let's say there's a little issue with one camera. We could try to take one of the other angles, stretch it out. And remember, in editing, we have the ability to do temporal changes. So we can do some slow motion, let's say, on a shot to try to stretch it out so it covers, let's say, a little bit of a focus or camera move issue that we want to fix. So that's really some great aspects. So those are really the 3 main things again. So single camera overview, the multi-camera filming, that each camera films its own footage. So every camera is filming. So you have, if there's 5 cameras filming, you have 5 media cards of footage that are independently recorded. So then you, as the editor, can decide which camera to go to at any given time, versus a single camera, you can only go to the single camera and use select parts. Then the third one is a little bit of in between the both, where there's one recording using multiple angles, and you as the editor can then look at just fixing up that recording. So again, if there's any technical issues, gaps, intermissions you might want to get rid of to keep it fluid. We don't need to sit, if there's a 20-30 minute intermission, you don't need to just run that if nothing's happening. You can cut it out and just put a title card, you know, Act 2, for example, or intermission, fade in, out, and we get going. We don't have to sit on it. So those are the 3 main ideas there. So it's really, you know, nothing too complicated, but that's really what we're usually seeing in terms of, you know, what has to happen. So here's the next part here. So multi-camera versus single camera. And what happens here is, you know, what is the difference here? And I wanted to identify that. So the multi-camera, it involves, you know, more than one camera. It requires a sync or alignment of the footage to edit. So you got to make sure that everything is synchronized together. One way to do this is very easily, is just having all the cameras record sound, and then you're hearing the sound and you can synchronize with the sound. And DaVinci Resolve actually lets us do you know, syncing of audio that way, which is a really great tool. So we can do syncing that way. And that ensures everything's in time with the footage, all the different cameras. Then the single camera capture, just one camera. So the editor, you can just choose any part of the footage, and it resembles more of a montage. So we're putting highlights. We're not necessarily able to show a whole piece, especially if the camera is moving around and maybe it's walking and you don't always get the best angle. A single camera wide shot, for example, could just be, you could use a whole piece of a song and make it work that way, and that's okay. So one tip here, when you're editing, try to find wide establishing shots without kind of, any action happening. So if they're just stationary, static, maybe performers on there, and if they're wide enough, you don't really see what's happening. These can be used as what's called cutaways. So if there's an issue, you can cut away to that wide, or you can use it to establish the performance area or space before things are happening. So by having that kind of a safety cutaway, let's say we don't necessarily see what's happening, so the, kind of somewhat matching. So if, let's say there's an orchestra playing, you can go to that wide. You maybe don't see exactly what they're playing, but you can always go to that at certain points if you need that safety cutaway. So just a tip that we can look at further in terms of how that works and what that means. So yeah, that's really the best thing here. Okay, so here's creating a story for live performances. What does that mean exactly? So there's many aspects of editing that can help enhance the story, and these include the following. So this is just suggestions, and there's probably many, many more, but just to get the thought process going in terms of how can we approach these live performances and make them work. So if you use behind the scenes shots to show the process, so again, that could be rehearsals, setting up, in between, audiences coming, you can use this kind of behind the scenes footage. And that's always really exciting and to see, because people don't always get to see that or see behind the scenes in terms of maybe backstage, seeing what's happening, seeing technically sound, lighting, getting ready, all this kind of behind the scenes footage. That could be really exciting to see, and it offers a different perspective for the audience, and it further tells the story because you get to see kind of the inner workings and the complexities of what this live performance is, and how you might see one person performing on the stage, but it takes dozens of people to make that performance happen, and we can show that through behind the scenes footage. Another suggestion I have is use interviews of the performers. Again, performers, artistic directors, musicians, conductors. You can learn more about what's being seen. So we can learn about the piece of music that's being played. We can learn about the ballet that's being performed. We can learn about the artwork that's being presented at the gallery. You can use these kinds of interviews to behind the scenes interviews of the artists or the people in this actual live performance. The next thing we can look at is use graphics and special effects, so we can help tell the story beyond what's just captured. So we can use graphics to identify what the piece is called, identify performers, identify song names, times of day, locations, any kind of pertinent information that the audience can use to help them better understand what they're seeing and what they're going to experience. And then you can also use special effects. So think about this. We can use like slow motion, I mentioned already, but slow motion can be used to highlight a specific part of the show. It can be used to slow things down if we want to cover a mistake from another angle, for example. So we have a close-up, we want to hold on close-up, slow motion. We can hold it, make it go a little bit longer. Then we can use things like digital zoom. So we can punch in, we can reframe and zoom in digitally on shots if there's an issue. Someone stood up in front of one of the cameras, their head's cutting off a bit of the side. We can zoom in a little bit, and that can fix that in terms of a shot. So there's that kind of enhancements. There can also be special effects. We can do like a title sequence. We can do special effects to create certain things. Then we can get into all the other topics we've talked about in the past, things like color grading. We can make a lot of things really interesting, how they look, the color grading, and the process of that whole idea. So that's always really neat. So in terms of the software, I always like to just show what we're using. So we're going to be looking at Blackmagic DaVinci Resolve. So this is a free nonlinear editing software, and you can use it, you can download it, and we have the whole studio version, that's the paid version. It's available at our library partner, iMac Computers. So I always encourage everyone to be able to, go check that out, and it's a great resource. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to look at, let's look at one of these, a concert, a live concert, and just, kind of give us an idea of what this means, this like live stream idea. I'm going to kind of zip through a little bit, but we'll get things going. So I'm going to just show a bit of this here. So here we go. just going to go forward here a little bit, and just so we can get an idea of another part here. So this is how it would be basically, you know, showing the wide. I'm going to go back to the sound here, but we see the wide. We can see different angles on stage. We can see, you know, the elements here of the conductor. So this is a bit of a moving shot here. And then we have different angle here. So there's an angle on this side. There's an angle, complementary angle on this side. So you can see there's 2 angles. So we're just cutting between 1 and 2. And these are all synchronized together. And, you know, just getting all the different nuances of the shots and the angles. Okay, so how do we put something like this together? So you can see there's different shots, different angles, and I have the sequence of what this was, just so we can look at what that means in terms of the different angles and the different shots and how this can be put together in terms of you know, making this work editorially. So let's have a look at that. So that's the concert footage, and now let's look at the actual like the project of what this means. I'm just going to get back to this here a little bit earlier. Okay, so here's the actual, the sequence now. So here's my sequence, and I'm just going to clear the, clear the in, clear it out. Okay, so here is, you know, I just wanted to rebuild this a bit, and I think one of the camera angles is missing on me here, but that's not a worry. But you can see here, this is basically it. So it's all the different camera angles. So as you go from one to the next, you can see all the different camera angles. And this is what we're deciding, is how do we make, you know, all these different camera angles work, right? So here we go. So let's look at, here's this one. It goes to this angle, goes to that angle, back to the angle. So we're just going back and forth. And that's all there is to the edit. Now, how do we line all of this up? And the one thing that was done was creating the this multicam. So you can see here, I'm going to zoom in here. There's a multicam. So there's camera 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This seems to be offline. 6 and 7. So we get all these camera angles, and they together are then in the multicam. So we can decide at any given point which camera angle to use. And it's a really not too complicated. It sounds more complicated, but if you watch here, so if I'm on this one here, you can then choose to use the different angle, and you decide, you know, which one do we want to use at which point. Now, let's go back to, you know, again, that's the more complex way. And this is the actual concert broken down. So this is how we start. So we take the whole concert. So you can see I have 7 layers here. So this is our main concert here. Then I have this layer here. Then I have that angle. I have this angle. I have this angle, this angle, and this angle, which is the as recorded. Right? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 cameras there, working together. So we have all of those shots, and that gives us then the ability to choose which one we want when. So this is what I usually do, just do a big lineup here. And what I make sure is that all of these are in sync. So how exactly do we want to do that is we want to make sure that we have So here, let's pull up the original shot. So here's like the shot like this. And because there's audio, I can then make sure that this synchronizes together. So how we do that would be as follows. So for example, I'm going to just create a copy of this so I don't destroy what was already done here. And I'm going to duplicate the timeline. Just going to take a second here to duplicate the timeline. One more second here. Okay, while that is loading, I'm going to go back here and we're going to look at another sample of multi-camera performance. And type this in right here. Oops. I'm just going to quit out of the Resolve here. 1 second. Okay, so here's another one. That was shot with multi-cameras. And what's interesting about this is, the idea here was to provide a little bit of some behind the scenes footage as well. So here, I'm just going to show you guys this part.
Should I call in audio?
Yes, please.
Audio's rolling.
Okay, cameras are all rolling.
Take 2.
If you need me, I'll just call out. I will be there. I'll be about. 'Cause the hard times, they came along.
Okay, perfect. So you can see how that's working. So we have, the opening where he says, okay, this is the song, take 1. And that's showing us that process of here we are recording this this performance, this concert performance. There was no audience, but this was, the idea was performing it, recording it with multiple cameras. But we get a bit of that process, which is really fun and exciting because then we see, okay, it's about to start and we have these kinds of fun moments. And I think there's like a bit of an ending here too. I'm just going to fast forward it through here a little bit. You can see like the camera comes down, and there's going to be end credits. This isn't completed, right? And that's kind of the idea there. And people are standing around, they're like these behind the scenes moments. And that's really, those are those kind of nice moments that we can use to help enhance the story and better capture, what we want to do and see. And seeing that, they're starting to record, they're kind of, posing for a picture at the end, the crane comes down, like these kinds of behind the scenes moments are really, helps to tell the story. So it's not necessarily exactly specifically telling the story, but that making of and the process I think can be really exciting. So again, something, I don't want to over dwell on that, but I think it, makes for really interesting filmmaking processes and concepts in that it can be done that way. Okay, so here I am back to the sequence here. So what I'm going to do is let's look over here. So one of these, see if I have this sequence here too. So some of these concerts too had essentially multiple cameras. So I just want to kind of showcase some of these. So as you can see here again, so just different cameras lined up, and that's the best way I like to always do that. Let's go back here. Okay, so here's the multi-camera breakdown again. So here's all our shots. So how do we create this? So let's start this from the beginning. So I'm going to go create new timeline. I'm going to say Popera demo multicam. And the single camera, you know, I'm not going to dwell too much on that because we're basically just looking for highlights, moments, and it's the same kind of editorial process that we usually have. So, you know, it really works in that kind of method. So, okay, so let's just go like from here. I'm going to take this chunk here, and this has audio. So this is kind of our guide track, if you will. And what I can do then is I'm going to just zoom out of this because this is a big long concert piece. It's like over an hour, but let's just say, okay, let's just go here. Now what I'm going to do is take this shot here, and this is kind of the raw thing, but this has sound as well. So I'm going to just put it here, for example. Now this has sound, and by selecting all of these, I can now say auto align clips based on waveform. It's going to find this music between the two, and it just takes a little bit of time. It's going to analyze the whole content. And what it's doing is it's trying to find the synchronization between the main clip and the recorded clip, the camera angle 1. And what it's going to do is it's going to line it up so that it actually matches in sync. So as long as you record audio from each specific camera angle, it's going to line itself up with the synchronization. It takes a bit of time because, again, this is over an hour of a concert, so we're about halfway done through here right now. And what it's doing is, so if there's like a, you know, piano's going ding, 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 it's finding the same thing in camera angle 1 going ding, 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 ding. And those two can then line up. And then we know that they're, you know, working together in synchronicity. And that's great. So that basically works from there. Okay, so let's go back to this here. So once we've synchronized, then we basically know that these two, the two different angles, you know, are the same. Even though we don't see it in this recorded piece, they're all the same. And then you keep doing that for all your angles that you have, and then you basically end up with this. So now, essentially, this shot is in sync here. And you can see here, even where they're positioned. So, you know, from the Y to here, the two performers are in the same angle. And here they're in the same angle as here, between here and here. So we can just cut now between these two elements. So then what we can do is we just go through these and you can just cut along. So I like to put them all on the same track like this. This is the one method. And then you just decide with the razor tool, okay, I'm going to use this part from, you know, here to here. And then you can Command X. I'll get rid of that. And now when I play this back, it's going to go from here. It's going to just be a little bit slow. I'm just working off a hard drive. A slower hard drive. This is just a backup project here. And then it's going to cut to the wide shot. Right? And we decide to go back and forth and back and forth. So that's all you're doing is just basically lining up all your shots in the multi-camera, then deciding what shot you want to see at what time. And we want to think about the pace of the music, and we want to think about, you know, what can work best to show that live performance and how we can do that. And that's all you're doing. So just you're lining up all your cameras, 1 through 7, 8, however many you have, synchronizing them so they auto sync with waveform align in the right click waveform alignment. You align all of those camera angles, and that way they're all in sync together so that they can cut together. And then you just choose to stay on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then by the time you're done, this is the beauty thing, you end up with, this will open up here. you end up with this. And then what you're doing is you can just go through this and you're just seeing this as it plays throughout. So as each shot happens. That's it. So again, we have camera 1, camera 2, camera 3. Right, you can see there's just this camera, this camera, this camera. So that's all the 7, and then you can just put them all back down onto 1, or you can leave them all stacked out into multiple angles. And that's how we achieve the multi-camera live performance editing. So we're just choosing basically which camera to use at any given time, cutting those, and then deciding which shot to be at on any given time, wide shot, these close-ups, closer, medium shots, and we just keep stacking one to the next, and it goes like that. It's a really, good, simple, straightforward method of being able to put it all together. Now the cool thing is once you have multiple shots, what we're able to do then is do things like create specific things. So we can say, okay, there was a desire to to make it different songs, different pieces. So for example, this piece. So then you just have this part, and then this is playing. And so again, you can see here's the conductor, so we can get these kinds of angles. So we can stay on the singer, and then we can say, okay, maybe we're going to focus on the conductor. So we can see the conductor working, and you saw in the beginning, just by starting in the beginning, we're able to showcase the conductor's work, right? And we can, again, this angle shows us a bit more of the conductor. So these are the things we can then decide is what are we going to see, how are we going to see it, when are we going to see it? And that makes it all work for our live performance editing. Let me pull this one up again here. So again, when we start, watch how it starts. See, we're just starting up, the conductor's about to start, and we're from the perspective of back here. This kind of a shot we would never see as an audience. And that's the really fun part, is that we can be back here as if we're part of the orchestra in this live performance, and then we're cutting to it, going back and forth from there. So that's really the essence of it. So the single camera idea is that you're just taking the highlights, putting it together, montaging it through. The multi-camera, you have to stack all of your shots, auto line, waveform, and then you just decide which one you see at any given time. Then you can put that all down to one video sequence, or you can have all 7 video tracks, and you're just cutting. So I use the razor tool, just cut. I want this shot, camera angle 3, from this point to this point, then I'm gonna go to camera angle 5, and so on. So it's just like a big checkerboard, a big pyramid of sorts, and making that all work. Just to give the perspective, we're like this, and then when we have the multi-camera, we have the whole stack like that. And that really helps to showcase the two ideas between the two. And here, just to show, I'm going to open up another sequence I have here, if you just bear with me a second. So the music concert performance, I'm just going to go here, master cuts. Okay, so here's like a cut. It's always good I like to showcase what a specific cut look like. So this doesn't have all the media in it, but this will just kind of give you an idea as I zoom in. So you have all the different shots. So it's just like cut, 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 and these are all the different angles. And that works really nicely. So this is exactly what I wanted to show. So here's here it is. So here they are all stacked. So I got this angle here, and you can see I'm just cutting out spaces that I want or I don't want. And that's how we easily do the multi-camera editing, is to do it that way. So you can see, so here's the top one, this one, and then whatever is in between, then see, you're going to see this camera, then you're going to see this camera, you're going to see this camera, and you're going to see this camera, and then down to this camera. So wherever there's a gap, you're going to see that camera. And that's the best thing about how you can work in this as layers. And that gets you, through the concepts of, making that work each time. So here's the segment cut again. So you can see we're seeing that bottom layer is there the whole time. And then we go to camera 2, 3, 4, and that's what the multi-camera ends up looking like. So that's how we're going to get to what eventually becomes, this whole consolidated cut. So then what I do is take all of those shots, bring them all down so they're back down onto one track the whole time, one video track, so you can collapse them all down. And then we get our final performance piece, which becomes something like this, right? So here we got the different angles, right? So this angle, and we're just cutting from one to the next. How do we tell the story? Holding on it, thinking about the music pace, and what do people want to see at any given time, our golden rules of editing. So we want to see the different things. If the violin's playing, I want to see the violin playing a bit. Let's cut to it, or let's go, a bit overhead and see it. And you can see we just keep going. Here's our wide shot that we can always go to. Really important to do different close-up here. And, just cutting, but again, not too fast. So here it is with the sound.
Now my sweet Sarah's gone, she passed before the dawn, and 4 children followed her there. 4 children followed her there. Ooh.
Perfect. So that's essentially what we're doing, right? Is just you just keep cutting, from one angle to the next angle, and stacking all those shots up, and then cutting between cameras 1 through 4, 5, 6, whatever you have, and auto aligning with the waveform, and that's how we do the multi-camera. Now, to do fixes, like as I mentioned, you can take whole recorded multi-camera, and then you can do some fixes. So taking out gaps is just back to basic editing. And same when we do like a single camera shoot as well. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna showcase what would be a single camera shoot. Let me just find a video. Okay, so this was done as a single camera shoot for a video. And I'll just play back a bit of this too. I'm gonna go to advanced settings here just for a second here, bear with me. Okay, here we go. So this is done as a single camera shoot, and then it's edited together. So here's this camera, and then some behind the scenes stuff. So the making of the music as it was recorded while they're performing it. And this is a great way to do, again, a live performance with some making of background. So shots, this is all single camera footage, and, making it work together as an edit. So this was done as one camera, and they repeated the music a few times to capture the different angles, and then it gets cut together. But imagine if it was a live show, the one camera might be running around getting the different shots, and we can cut this all together that way after. And you can see it gets montagey, and it can work that way quite nicely. So that's how we can get the multi-camera with, a single shot, especially this behind the scenes footage, all one camera, montaging it all together to make it work. Perfect. So that concludes, what the multi-camera, the live performance aspects of what's possible. And again, there's a lot more. This is the kind of our intro to start to get our minds around this, but to really make this work. And how can we do this, and the different methodologies behind live performance editing and what we're trying to achieve. So again, there could be single camera where you're looking at highlights, montaging, the multi-camera where everything's recorded, then you do the whole stack, synchronize and make that cut. Or where you have a multi-camera single video recorded as switched or as live recorded, and then you might be using it to, again, create highlights, to fix things up, get rid of intermissions, and get rid of any kind of mistakes or errors. So that's the goal of editing, as always. So again, thanks for joining me. As I mentioned, we will have some longer in-person sessions on these topics in the near future. So really excited to be able to do that. So stay tuned for those, and that will really get our hands on into to working on this. So this is the beginning of what live performance editing is all about. I want to thank all our partners in this project, the Canada Council for the Arts, and our library partners, where you can access the digital arts computers and even cameras to do live performance filming. We have the Blue Mountains Public Library, Collingwood Public Library, and the Wasaga Beach Public Library. Thanks for joining me. You can rewatch this, as I mentioned, right after this at the same link, and eventually we will have everything on our YouTube channel as well. tom@tbmcs.ca if you have any questions you want to email me about, and I look forward to seeing you at our next session. All the best and have a great day.